So in healthcare, and I think most design spaces, there are multiple layers that one has to look into. In healthcare, it becomes a lot more.
Yeah.
There is a lot more technical that comes into play, and there's a lot more empathy required. And I think that's what we bring in at Meraki Design into the spaces.
So one element which is being spoken a lot in terms of design in hospitals is biophilic design. So a lot of natural light, a lot of greenery. How is...
Especially PET, CT, MRI, they can be quite daunting for a patient. You know, the machine itself is so huge and the sound it makes. So like I said, when you look at trying to reduce their anxiety or nothing else distract them, each of these rooms we take up in a themed manner. So in the Mahajan imaging project that we've done for them for the last 8 years, all the centers have a different theme to each of the MRI, gamma camera, PET, CT room. If the intent is to create a newer look every time, we do that. If the intent is to create the brand which is more scalable across, we've done that. But we make sure that the brand has an identity of it, a unique identity. Tough one. I would say one thing is to look at it with empathy. I think always look at it with the eyes of the end user, be it the doctor. And we've given a theme to each of them. So being in Uttarakhand, we've taken flora and fauna as a theme. We worked with multiple artists to come up with different art elements in it, sculptural elements, mural art. And we've designed the whole sitting waiting area to be around those art.
Lovely.
So that
Hello everyone, this is Atharv here from Design and Dialogues, and today I'm joined by architect Chandrika Sahay. Welcome, how are you?
Thank you. I'm very excited to be part of this podcast and looking forward to an interactive discussion on my favorite topic.
Yes, I know. So before I begin, I just want to congratulate you. I know you've won plenty of awards, but the one that you've won recently is Powerful Women in Architecture and Design.
Yes.
How does it feel to be one of the influential figures in such a category?
Humbled, honestly, because to us, I think our projects and the impact it has on people is more an award for us. But if the industry recognizes us like this as a powerful 100 women architect in the nation, it definitely feels good to be recognized. But I think very humbled and blessed.
That's good. And you're carving a niche for yourself in the healthcare design space, which I'm very excited to talk about. And it is also something that not a lot of people talk about. So tell me, how did you sort of get into this?
I'm glad you asked that. So it's a very interesting, I've been over 2 decades of practicing as an architect, and we've done work globally. We worked in the Middle East and here. We were doing a lot of hospitality spaces, a lot of hotels, restaurants, and we've done a couple of famous projects there. So when I had moved back to India and to Gurgaon, Mahajan Imaging approached us to design their center, the diagnostic center, Mahajan Imaging Gurgaon. And that was my first healthcare project. And Gurgaon as a city is so known for its restaurants and breweries and the corporate offices of Google and Meta.
Concrete jungle.
Yeah, it's the millennial, it's the aspirational city, and you know, the spaces are relatively talked a lot about. But when you came to the healthcare segment, when I looked around the other diagnostic center, clinics and hospitals, they're relatively drab and very plain Jane, right? You'll find white walls, you'll find cold stainless steel chairs, printed artworks. And that was like, why? Why is it that healthcare, which is a place that people go not by choice, but by need, and it doesn't have the same treatment? So I'm not a doctor, I cannot save the life, but that experience that a patient goes through before they reach the doctor or afterwards, and especially when I was doing a diagnostic center, which is the beginning of a healthcare recovery journey. You know, and you hear people have anxiety, and some people have trauma of the big machines, the sounds. You know, they are. So I said, how can I calm them? How can I remove their anxiety? And which is what our approach began. And today, I mean, I still remember the day of the opening. Dr. Mahajan himself came and said, you know, it feels like such a nice relaxed space, you feel like opening up a beer and having it here. So I think that, and today of course when you read the visitor book, it is a testament of our intent was good.
So when you're designing such a space, do you take into consideration some of the psychological factors, or is it purely design that you play with?
Of course we do. Of course we do. So in healthcare, and I think most design spaces, there are multiple layers that one has to look into. In healthcare, it becomes a lot more. There is a lot more technical that comes into play, and there's a lot more empathy required. And I think that's what we bring in at Meraki Design into the spaces. We always design with the end user in mind. So what are the touch points? What are they looking at? Because like I said, our intent is to reduce their anxiety. And I said, if nothing else, distract them. Because they are going to come maybe once, maybe multiple times to that same center. You know, treatments are long, prolonged, or very strenuous. So how can that journey of theirs be comfortable?
Yeah.
Is our intent. How to bring that humane into the whole healthcare system. And therefore, you do look at psychology of spaces, you look at psychology of colors, you look at textures and patterns, what are they looking at, how the spaces are. Because like I said, there's so much technical involved, and space being what it is, not every space can get that viewpoint or thing, but yet how within those constraints can we bring it in is what we look at every space.
So why do you think that traditional hospitals have sort of kept away from it? What has changed over the years that people have eventually realized that we need to bring a bit of empathy, a bit of humaneness into the design?
Traditionally, I think it was more because any hospital or a hotel you set up, it's a huge investment. It goes into hundreds of crores.
Yes.
Right? Just the building infrastructure, then to the medical equipment and OT equipment, it's huge. So, and you have to have it all set up from day one before your first patient comes in or your first guest comes to stay with you. So having said that, while hospitality was very experienced, right? So it had that, whether your resort or the hotel looked at some viewpoints or the kind of branding it had, it drove business.
Yeah.
And therefore there was very ingrained into it. Whereas I think probably traditionally in healthcare, doctor ke paas jana hai to doctor ke paas jana hai, they didn't pay much attention to that patient experience, or that that was the important part. Surgery karni should be a good surgery. But I think today, when there is stiff competition, when there has lifestyles have evolved so much. I mean, not everybody would like to be sitting on a cold stainless steel bench.
That is true.
I mean, to me, when I saw that, it's like, oh, I'm sick, so I'm sitting on a cold stainless steel bench. It has hygiene associated, but not everyone's lifestyle would like to be part of that.
Yeah.
So I think this evolution that's happened has now, even brands and big have realized that the difference that they can make, apart from having the best of doctors, is also the patient experience. And that starts from the time they walk in to they leave the premise.
Yeah. So it's more not just, it's just a process that's taken into consideration, not just the end result, basically.
True.
So one element which is being spoken a lot in terms of design in hospitals is biophilic design. So a lot of natural light, a lot of greenery. Do you incorporate that? How is that being taken into consideration as well?
Of course. In fact, we've been using biophilic elements long before it became a very trending word.
Okay.
And if I may share a story, I don't know if you've read the story of The Last Leaf by O. Henry.
I haven't, tell me.
So it's a story set in Greenwich Village, where there's this girl who's really sick down with pneumonia in her last few days, and from her room she has a small window from where she can see this little vine in the corner growing, and it's autumn turning to winters, and she keeps thinking that as she sees the leaves falling, her health is also deteriorating. So she associates that she's going to live as long as that plant is there, and she has a neighbor who's a failed artist who's taking care of her and all, and motivating her to live and trying to. And a storm comes, and she's literally holding on to her last breath. If that leaf, the last one goes, and I also go. And a storm comes in, but the leaf is there, and she keeps getting, she gets better and she gets better, and she's back to normal. Meantime, this neighbor of hers, the artist, gets pneumonia, and he's deteriorating, and eventually he passes away. And later, when she's fit and fine and she goes out, she sees that he had painted that leaf onto the wall. So he did a realistic, his last masterpiece was that leaf, and how it motivated her to live and get back to life. So nature, I mean, this is a story that definitely touched me, but nature, I think all of us, when living in such a stressful world and non-stop activity, if you go out to a park, go for a walk in trees, it definitely regenerates you. It de-stresses you, it revives you, it motivates you in so many different ways, right? You go for a holiday, you go to a forested area, to the hills or the beach to recharge yourself. If you can bring that into a premise where people are recovering, won't the impact be there?
Yes.
It of course will be.
Yeah.
So biophilic has of course become a very trending, because when you are looking at improving a recovery cycle, not just being limited to medicines, but to the whole journey, biophilic plays a huge role. And today you've got ways and means to do it in a compact space, whether it's bring in a courtyard, bring in indoor plants, bring in vertical gardens have now come in, to even now artificial plants coming in. So that whole, your eyes are seeing that greenery, are seeing that thing. It makes a huge difference, no doubt.
It's so underestimated that how much natural light and greenery can actually enhance your, not just productivity, but health and fitness as well.
It is the core.
I know there are a few hospitals in India which have really taken over, and they're incorporating such biophilic designs into their architecture. So is there one in India that actually stands out for you?
Where they've worked with the lights and all? You know, I remember going as a kid to meet a relative who was being treated here in Delhi, I think in Ram Manohar Lohia Hospital.
Okay.
And so the rooms were there, there was a corridor, and there was this huge courtyard which had greenery, grass. And I remember, I mean, as a kid in school, so whatever the serious issue there was going on inside, but I would go sit in that courtyard or in the corridor, look out. And that felt nice.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's fairly scary to be going and meeting people. And I remember all the rooms faced it, and then another patient came out in a wheelchair, and then she was sitting there for some time before the nurse rolled her back in. So I think that is one hospital that I would say did connect with me as a kid. Okay. Where there were a lot of green spaces that the rooms opened up into.
I love the way that you've associated that with how you were a kid. There's this children's hospital in Pittsburgh in the US, which has been doing very interactive sort of spaces for the kids, because as you can imagine, going through the process as a kid is very tiresome.
Yes.
So the PET and CT scan rooms that they've got is done remarkably well. Is there something similar that you've done in India?
Oh yes. So we, again, because all these spaces, like in our projects, a lot of rooms look so different. They're not cut, copy, paste, even the rooms within a project, because especially PET, CT, MRI, they can be quite daunting for a patient. You know, the machine itself is so huge, and the sound it makes. So like I said, when we look at trying to reduce their anxiety or nothing else distract them, each of these rooms we take up in a themed manner. So in the Mahajan imaging projects that we've done for them for the last 8 years, all the centers have a different theme to each of the MRI, gamma camera, PET, CT rooms, which are again, interesting. We've done some brick tile work, we've done some windows, backlit windows, we've done some customized, printing to give that courtyard feel or to give an outdoor of the house feel. And I think these things make an impact. Even though the patient may just see that in the brief minutes that they're entering and going onto the gantry of the machine, but it definitely eases them out.
So with pediatric, geriatric, oncology, would you customize the designs as well?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So like we did Canman Hospital, and I remember the patient, we oriented the bed so that the patient looks out to the window. Right. And we did graphic murals of puzzles. Because children, while they're lying down, if they're sedated, fine, they're drowsy. But if they're alert and they're still on medication, their mind, they're restless. They want to get out. So how to do it? So we just did some, wall graphic puzzles so that they could just
keep themselves busy, distracted,
and things like that. So each of these spaces have a lot of things. Of course, apart from how we integrate art to keep it engaging, there are a lot of technicalities that come into, right? In energy geriatric, you need to be more careful to the kind of slopes, ramps, the grab bars that they have, at what place they are kept. Even in pediatrics, something very simple as the height of the sink, the basin, we look into all of these aspects so that it's convenient for them. So like I said, there are multiple layers to a healthcare design that one has to look into. So every department, every space is looked in with a lot of details.
On the flip side, we've spoken about patients and how design affects them. But what about people who are in the waiting area, their friends, their family, who are going through, I wouldn't say an equally tumultuous time, but something which is as stressful for them? How do we deal with that? How does design assist them?
Oh, hugely. So I'm glad you bring up, all these are the points we love to work and design, because when you're designing a healthcare space, you're not looking at just the patient. You're designing for the attendant. You're designing for the doctor, whose office space it is. You're designing for the staff. So when we talk about corporate office space, we're designing for efficiency of the staff. You have to bring that layer even into a healthcare building. And attendants, of course, because they are spending hours. In fact, it was when I was reading the visitor book of one of the Mahajan imaging centers we designed that I realized I remember one of the attendant had written that I came with my mother for a scan.
Okay.
And I forgot about it, and we enjoyed our conversation here. And that's when I realized that today's hustle bustle of city living, we may not have time to carve out to go with your mother or a father or a sister or a brother for otherwise you'll be stuck with work and family. But if they have a doctor appointment, you will carve out the time and be with them.
True.
And unfortunately today, the quality time you spend with your loved ones is in a waiting area of a doctor's lounge or a hospital waiting area. So if I feel if I can leave an impact is there.
Yeah.
If we can design those waiting areas beautifully. So you see our projects, we don't have linear lines of chairs, you sit in clusters.
Okay.
We may make the table compact because of space constraint, but we would like you to sit in a cluster, you have conversations. You don't just look at a blank screen. You look at some art, you look at something that engages you. So we are doing a hospital project in Dehradun called SMIH, which is a 1,500 bedded hospital. And the whole OPD area, which has about 2,000 people coming in daily.
Okay.
So it has about 8 or 10 waiting areas, zones that we've done. And we've given a theme to each of them. So being in Uttarakhand, we've taken flora and fauna as a theme. We're working with multiple artists to come up with different, art elements in it, sculptural elements, mural art. And we've designed the whole sitting waiting area to be around those art.
Lovely.
So that you get comfortable, you get distracted, there's something connected to your home, your own land, you can associate with it, and it just eases the whole journey.
I can imagine.
And it adds a lot of color to the space.
Lovely. Could you walk us through a hospital project that you've done that has really carved the way for you?
So we've done quite a few by now, and they all have, so at our office at Meraki Dezine, we constantly challenge ourselves. We don't believe in two of our projects looking the same. And they can't be either, because we're doing them for either different clients. So even if we've done for a single client multiple projects, we try and, if the intent is to create a newer look every time, we do that. If the intent is to create the brand which is more scalable across, we've done that. But we make sure that the brand has an identity of it. A unique identity that people can associate with that hospital physical space. So no two projects are same for us. But having said that, I think with the spectrum of projects we've done, I don't know how to run you through one. They're all different. Like I mentioned earlier, SMIH, we took a theme and we are stitching that throughout the entire hospital, which is going to add a very nice vibe. It's an ongoing project, so soon we shall have refinished photographs. Mahajanam, of course, multiple centers across, each being very different to create a... And even it's nice when you have people coming back and saying, oh, how thoughtfully. I remember a cousin of mine was there. She said, oh, I just loved going to Mahajanam. She said, it was so nice in the waiting area, you had a table. So she said, I had some work commitment, I could open my laptop and work. And subtle things like this you realize are so much more beneficial to people today. So I don't know which one to walk you through, but they're all we've done from small scale, 5,000 square feet to 2 lakh to 1,500 bedded. So yeah, there is
So coming to a more technical sort of business side of things. Is the hospital design the main thing that would drive people into the hospital? Or is it the panel of doctors that they've got that will determine as to if I'm going to choose this hospital or clinic or not?
I would say obviously the panel of doctors first, because you're coming for the doctor, right? If you go to a restaurant, it's the food is the hero. The ambience just adds to your experience before you reach to that food. So same way here, the panel of doctors is the hero of the project. But today, having said that, how, like I said, things have evolved, it's kind of like a Venn diagram now. You have got the patient experience, the interior spaces, the built form, the patient flow, forming a huge part of that. You've got the panel of doctors and you've got the brand. Because today, brands are important. People are going to a Fortis, a Max, a Medanta, because they stand for a certain quality of service. So I think all three, the culmination of all three is what makes it the ideal hospital to go to.
So speaking of brands, there are obviously some challenges that come with this as well. Have you ever faced any pushback when you're trying to humanize a space where it is meant to be for efficiency?
I don't think I've had a pushback per se. I think, in fact, we have people reaching out to us to come and design the spaces. And I think largely it's because they're seeing the impact it has to the business itself, the kind of quick turnaround in the ROIs you get, because people are preferring that. And especially in cities like Delhi and NCR, they expect a certain level of space quality. So I haven't had pushbacks. I think it's been valued more.
Okay. So as an architect, how do you balance function, hygiene, and emotional comfort?
You have asked me a question which takes all my 20 plus years of experience into one question.
Yeah.
How can I divulge it right here?
You have to let in on your trade secrets now.
So that is what our experience is all about, right? There are so many layers to things and all of these that come in. So it's very difficult to put it into a short answer. So I'm sorry. You'll have to come with a project and I can show you how we do it in that.
Okay. If you have to really narrow it down in terms of, some of the restrictions that you might have. So is there one thing that, you take into consideration that you say, okay, this is, again, as you said, it's a Venn diagram now. So what's one small little nugget that you can give to, anyone who's interested in this space? What's one thing that they should definitely take care of?
Tough one. I would say one thing is to look at it with empathy.
Okay.
I think always look at it with the eyes of the end user, be it the doctor, be it the GDA staff, be it the attendant, be it the patient. I think always look at it with empathy. The other things are, of course, a lot of technical structure that comes in, services that come in, which you cannot do about. There are so many medical equipments that you do, and there's certain NABH guidelines and all that you have to adhere to, which are all part of the brief. Mm-hmm. But over above that, I think always have some empathy.
Okay.
Yeah, weave that into your design.
So how can the institutions push for a more human-centered in hospital culture?
I think they've already come into picture. I mean, like I said, a lot of has evolved, and it's evolving at a faster pace with tech integration. But it is there. The institutions have realized the value of being more human-centric, and it is now part of their mandate largely. Even those which were built, let's say 20-25 years back, are upgrading it to a more humane-centric way. The newer projects that are coming up definitely have that approach. So, like Marengo Asia is our client, and they have humane by practice is their tagline. So it's coming in there in large. And a lot of places are moving up and upgrading themselves towards that.
Nice. So before we close this podcast, I just want to ask one last question.
Sure.
Which is, if budget and regulations were not an issue, what an ideal hospital for architect Chandrika Sahay will look like?
Oh wow, I never really thought of that. Probably look like a nice resort, where you are surrounded by greenery, open space, and you have your nice little rooms, cottage with all the medical gas and equipment accessible, but surrounded by greens all along. Definitely.
All right, lovely. This is definitely a podcast which I was really looking forward to, because hospitals are associated with fear and anxiety, and only when you have visited a proper hospital where design has been incorporated nicely, you understand the value of the process, the experience, and not just the end result. When I first initially spoke to you, you seemed very, very not just inspiring in this field, but very excited about this. And when I decided to get into this topic, I couldn't think of anyone else who would be a better guest.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. It's like I said, it's a passion thing for me. It's not driven by just the money that comes from it. It is because I think this is one space where you really, really leave a huge impact on people. And I think as architects, what is our aim? Our aim is to just impact the quality of life of people around us. So it gives me great satisfaction as a person when we as a firm are able to deliver good projects. And I'm glad to be inspiring more, and I hope more people join up and take up healthcare design and start doing more creative work into this field.
Hopefully. But
yeah, it's a very, very in-depth subject. It's not just the finishes on the top you see, or the greenery biophilic. There is so much that comes into it in terms of patient flow, in terms of service flow, in terms of the whole site. So one must really, really study hard and work hard into it before you can start really seeing the impact you make to the spaces. Yeah.
Well, thank you once again for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me here.
Lovely
I really
discussion
enjoyed
today.
It.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah.